Hey guys, welcome back, and we're going to take up state machines. I told you we were going to do that, and now we're going to do it. So I've got started here the beginning of the state machine. I kind of was playing a little bit with it before going, make sure I kind of could actually get something together. So got something together. So I'm going to go over it and then adding a new state, and kind of this replaces a little bit of the first piece. It should make debugging a lot easier. Well, debugging itself, it should be less error prone, would be the better way to put it. We want to be able to have fewer bugs. So just to show off a little bit of how we're going, we have that same check for, do we have a gang? Go ahead and get out. So I guess first off, we're recreating this player gang automation where the whole point is to automate the beginning of the new node to allow you to get to a creation of a gang in a quick amount of time. So that's kind of what we're doing. So when we are in our gang, we no longer need to do this. So we get out, right? I added a thing here for if I'm not in Slum Snakes to make sure I join that faction. And, if I'm not ready yet, it'll fail. And eventually, once it gets to the point to where I can, it'll succeed and then never call it again. And then here's the magic of our state machine. We just say state machine, and each time we run, I have a method called process tick. Basically, it's very similar to like game development, and where you're doing the, each game loop is a tick, and kind of going that route with it. So that's the plan. So what we need to do is figure out the logic of how the state machine works. Because if you're looking, this looks very simple, easy to understand. So let's come down here, call this the player state machine. And what we have is our current state, which in the beginning, I have it set as our default for idle. We're not doing anything. And then these are the current states I have, an idle and a strength. So if we go back to the other one, we had, we're going to build our strength, defense, dexterity, agility, get some hacking, do some homicide so we can get our karma up. So that way we can actually create the gang, right? So that's what we're doing. So right now I have our idle and our strength, and we will go ahead and create the defense one next, right? And so DEF, def state here, right? So now I need to create that. And here's my strength, and here's my idle that I've got going up here. So let me collapse that one. We'll keep this one. I copy it. Then we will go through it and change this over to be a defense state. All right, so the way that I've rigged it up is there's kind of different ways to do your states. And the big thing is that a particular state can only transition from one state to the next state. It's called a finite state machine. You can Google that or just state machine. But the idea is that you transition from one state to the next state, so that way you can figure out where you were at and what are the allowed actions that you can do. So you can't only go from one state, and you should only have certain options to go to specific states. So in this particular case, with our defense, we just, on our tick, we basically were checking to say, hey, this is our, on tick here. If our defense, I was testing it out. So if our defense is greater than 100, then we can transition out of our defense state, and we're going to transition back to the idle state. And that's kind of what we're doing here, right? So on each tick, we're saying, hey, we want to do that. So when we specifically enter this state, we are going through and saying, hey, let's start the gym workout. And we will transition out of this state. You know, each time we sleep, we'll check, and then we'll transition out. When we are exiting this state, I just went ahead and just said, you know, let's stop the action. So that way we no longer continue doing that. Right? So it makes it a lot easier to reason about. When I enter, I start working out at the gym. Every tick, I'm going to check, have I gotten enough? If I have, then I go out to idle. And when I exit, I go ahead and stop working out at the gym. Right? So that's the bones of it. So the question becomes, how do each of these get called? So if we go back to our state machine, we have our current, we have what our states are, and then we have this process tick. So this is the player machine process tick. That's what that is here, this process tick. And then we have another one called change state. So this change state is the one that was called here on the in-tick machine change state. That's what this piece is. So these are kind of the magic of these. And as long as a state has these methods, these functions, right, then we can get it to work. So on the process, we take what our current state is, because this is a string. Sorry, I guess I probably should have said that. If we go to the top, I've created constants because I'll reference them a bunch. You know, I can hover over it and say, that's what that is, right? These, when you hover over it, can show you the states, right? So here's the on tick, the on enter, things like that. This one is missing one, and I'll show that reason for that. So we have our current state, right? So we get the states. So when we say this, what this means is it's referencing the thing that I'm in, right? So this is the player machine state. That's what this is referring to. So that way I'm getting these states here. And I'm taking the current state, which is a string. So in this case, idle, to grab this idle guy. And I'm going to do the on tick method. Well, actually, I'm grabbing the on tick, and this if statement is for if this exists, then we are going to go ahead and do the calling of that, passing in this, the player machine, and we want to pass in the NS so we can actually do stuff. And then if this method doesn't exist on this particular state, I just have, hey, we're missing the onTick method, so that way I can debug it. Maybe instead of print, maybe you want this as an alert, so that way you can say, get a big old pop-up that says, hey, you missed something, right? So in this particular case, we have the onTick, this is the idle, so it goes up to idle to then look at the onTick, where we've passed in the machine, right? The overall player state machine. And we say, hey, if the strength is less than 200, then let's change our state and transition into the strength state, right? And so then that goes into our change state. So in our change state, we have our NS and what our new state is going to be. So I just have a thing here of, hey, if I somehow passed in the same state, just a little error message there. And we don't do anything. We don't change or do anything. In the game, the same kind of thing. We check to make sure that we have an on exit on our current one. Right. Then we go and we change our current state to be what the new state is. If we want, we could add an if statement here to make sure that this new state is one that actually exists. In fact, let's go ahead and do that now. We have the if statement there, and we have if would be this dot states. Actually, we want if it doesn't exist, the states dot new state. So if that's not there, then we want to be able to print out or alert two. New state does not exist. New state of new state. Right, you can say that the new state doesn't exist. And again, we're going to return, and we're not going to change anything else. All right. So now we are going to change. So, we got our current state, and we're going to say on our current state, check to see if it has the on exit. If it does, call the on exit. The idle, I believe, did not have one. Right? Didn't have one. So it's okay. You don't have to do anything on exit. Instead of putting on an empty function, let's just leave it out. Save some space. We go ahead and set our new state. And then again, we have the on enter. Check, because you don't always have to have the on enter, right? And then if so, go ahead and call it. Each time we're passing in the machine. Right? So that way it's got all the different pieces. So that way we can do the on enter. So now we would be going into the strength. In the strength, we have our on enter, right? It doesn't use the machine, but there may be somewhere we do. So to be consistent, to be the same, I have to make sure I pass it in. It's fine, I just won't use it. I just got a little statement here to say that I've entered. So that way I can, look and validate that I'm actually going through, right? On enter, we're going to the gym. So there's some fragility with this. This makes the assumption that when I enter the state, I'm already in the correct city. If I'm not in the correct city, this could potentially fail, and I will never be working out and never do things right. So we may want to do some extra stuff here. We may want to say, hey, let's make sure we are in the correct city and travel to city if not, right? Well, what if we don't have enough money to travel? So, right. So you could easily say, hey, we can try to do it on in enter. If we're not in the correct city and we don't have enough money, well, then we need to make sure that here for the on tick that we are worried about doing that piece, right? Making sure that we travel to the right place, waiting till we have enough money. And then, so you'd want to expand that. Since this is always at the start of a level, I'm always going to be starting in the correct city, so I'm not worried about that. That's why we're sticking on that, right? So we have our enter, we go through, that finishes our on enter, and then we get out of the change state, which was back in our idle, right? Change states, that finishes the on tick, which finishes the on tick here, which finishes the process tick, which means we're now back out when we sleep, right? So we're back out. We wait, we do these checks again. We come back into process tick. Process tick is in the strength state, right? So we're going to go down into process state. We're in the strength. We're going to go into strength on the on tick. On tick. Do we have enough strength yet? Let's just say no. That finishes the on tick, which finishes the on process. We're back out, right? So it'll keep looping over and over and over till eventually we have enough strength, in which case we change back to idle. And then idle, we've got our exit. So we're going to stop the action. And then we're going to enter. And this particular idle, what I did is I just said, hey, go ahead and just call the on tick right away. I don't have to do that. But the reason I did that was I didn't want to have to wait another 5 seconds before it to actually go to, say, defense, right? Because I eventually end up losing time. And so I figured, just go ahead and move on to the next thing, right? And that might not be the correct thing later on. Maybe there's exit stuff that you don't want, and enter exits to where things just don't work very well that fast. I don't know. But so far, this works for me. This becomes easy to change. All I got to do is just comment it out. Right? Not a big deal. So this is a state machine that we've got going. And I've just moved the different states to be their own pieces. I mean, I could easily embed these inside of here, but then to me, it looks very cluttered and hard to follow, kind of like I put it in with these, right? But I could easily change these out, move them outside to be different functions, put them up here. The thing to keep in mind is because JavaScript goes from line by line from top to bottom, is that you need to define these before you use them. And if you notice, I am outside of the main, right? I'm outside of the main. Just like with constants, I could move these above. Actually, I say that, but I'm using the player state machine out here. So I guess, because this is called outside of this file, right, from the main. So all of this has already been processed. That's why. I mean, it'd be easy to find out, right? I take the idle, move it down to the bottom, because now I'm curious. Start. Yeah, cannot access before initialization. Yeah, so what I was saying is correct. Sorry, in case you did not see that. Cannot access idle state before initialization. Because it hasn't been initialized yet, because it has created, let's just go back up, back. There we go. Because it tried to use this variable here before it was actually declared, right? So I get away with that because this is an export, so it's actually being called outside of this. So the whole file is loaded, processed before this gets called. That's why I can get away with it for the main there. So cool. So that is the state machine. We can add the various other states. And I don't know if you guys want to watch me do that or not, but that's the gist of what it is that we're doing. Yeah, no, I think I'll call that good for now. And I will just start up another stream for the next bit, which is going to be on, what do I want to focus on? So the things that we need to do for this particular node is get to the end. What other things can we automate? We can automate the joining of factions. We can automate the buying of the dark web pieces. So that way we can automate backdoors and routing and all that. Joining factions, and then actually buying our augments, and then actually destroying the daemon. So I think I will tackle doing the buying of the dark web and setting up the Tor, as well as upgrading our computer. That could all go together, I think. No, I want to have those as separate things, so that way I'm not using up all the RAM and everything. So we'll go that route. I'll probably just do mini video streams on each of those, so that way you can get them small and quick and to the point, and so you can kind of pick and choose the pieces you want to worry about. Yeah, we'll go that route. Cool. All right, take care, guys.